All right, and we are live. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Chris, and this is my channel, We Love Comics. And I wasn't expecting to do another video today, but one of my subscribers left a very interesting comment that I think should absolutely be addressed. So I wanted to share my perspective as a small business owner about what I see down the road. And I already starting to see this happen, and I think a few people have already started to see this themselves, and that is local comic book stores starting to close. And one of the subscribers, and I'm not going to mention a name because I don't want them to think I'm calling them out or anything, because I think this is a really good topic of discussion, and what they wrote a lot of people think about, and I hopefully can try and show you an alternative viewpoint to maybe reconsider what I like to call short-term business practice. Now, again, it's not to insult. It's sometimes people only see things in the short term and they don't think of long-term goals. And that's how most individuals think. But businesses, they tend to plan years ahead and have long-term goals. And governments actually, believe it or not, plan things up to 50 years in advance. Because you have to know what's down the road if you want to stay relevant. So this is a very good topic. So I'm going to read the person's their inspirational comment that they left. But I'm not going to say their name because, again, I don't want anyone to think I'm trying to diss them or anything like that. No, this is live, Miss Hustle. So hello, welcome. I'm glad to see you. Jeremy, Yancey Street Gang. A couple of new people. Comic Traveler, Bootnan Bozal, Sith Lord. Alright, so, I want to read this, and if the individual wants to make their presence known in a comment, they're more than welcome to. Again, this is not about trying to bash anyone. This is really trying to help people maybe see another viewpoint of why I'm doing what I'm doing. Now, before I read it, it's basically in regards to a video I made earlier today, where I was showing some of the new comic books that are out. Now, one of the things that I stated is, one of the books that I did not show is the fact that, just to check, can you guys hear me? Because Jesus said that he's writing hello, so it might be just you, unless you're just saying hello with the question marks. But if anybody can let me know they can hear me, let me know, but I'll continue until I hear otherwise. So, one of the books that I did not buy today and did not show was The Life of Captain Marvel #1. And the reason I stated it is because I don't like the fact that Marvel now has a regular practice where #1 issues are being charged $4.99. Okay, so people said they can hear me. Thank you for that. Now, in my opinion, $4.99 is too high. And I did make a statement where I said I would rather wait until someone on eBay sells it and buy it from them, even at a higher price, because this way I'm not giving my money to Marvel itself. Now, I'm going to explain the method to my madness, because I'm actually thinking long-term when it comes to that. Because if you know anything about companies, they first have to test you to see how far they can push you as far as prices are concerned. So if you ever remember, and I mentioned this in that video, remember when, and I'm just going to use Marvel as an example, because that's the book I'm referring to in this one that started this whole inspiration for this video. Remember when Marvel had books that said still 15 cents, still 20 cents, still 25 cents, still 75 cents? If you ever look after a month or two of them printing that on their comics, all of a sudden the prices went up. So to me, when you see a $4.99 price tag just on the #1s, they're testing the market to see if you'll buy them or not. So that's the premise of what inspired this subscriber to leave the comment that they left. And they did it very respectful. They're showing their point. They're showing their opinion. So again, I'm not bashing it. So let's read it, and then I'm going to share what I would respond. Well, I did respond to it, but I'm going to put it here more clearly. So this is what the person wrote. So they wrote, so Marvel has a book that you want, but it's priced higher than what you like, so you won't buy it off the shelf, which is absolutely true. You said that you would be willing to purchase the same book from eBay to help support a seller. That is also true. So this is where I think where they differ. He says, why not just purchase the book from your local comic shop owner and continue to support him or her in their livelihood? After all, and I'm putting he/she because not every comic shop owner is a male. So after all, he or she does front the money to bring you great books every week. You have a pull list with them, and I'm sure they know your name as you probably know theirs. Continues, to me, it makes perfect sense to support the local business and not somebody you will never meet. And then they go on to say, I would only go to eBay if my local comic shop is sold out. Just my 2 cents. So, first of all, I want to thank that person for the inspiration for this video. And I am sure many people will agree with his point of view. And that's why I think this definitely warrants discussion. So I'm going to talk about the fact, because I have experience of being a business owner. I own my own 2 businesses. Now, I don't have my own actual shop, but being a licensed massage therapist, I rent space in a salon. So it is my own business. I just have less overhead by renting a room instead of renting an entire building, because I don't have to worry about electricity and all the other fees that go along with it. And I also have my own karaoke DJ business. Again, I don't need a storefront for that, so I save on a lot of the other costs. So I do have experience with business, and you have to think of it long term, because here's the thing that I want to make sure that you understand from my point of view. And again, this is my opinion. You can differ. I'm not here to tell you how to think. Yes, if I was to buy that book from the local comic shop, it will help the local comic shop stay in business for the short term. But here is exactly what happens, and this is what's going to end up ultimately causing what happened in the 90s, which ultimately led to probably 90% of the smaller comic stores to disappear and fade from existence, is the fact that the reason that comic book stores are struggling is because of Marvel, DC, or any of these companies raising their prices. Because you have to understand, a comic shop is not just buying what's on your pull list. They're buying almost every single comic that's out, and they have to buy multiple copies with hopes that you will purchase them. Keep in mind, when somebody sells a 1 in 100 variant, that means they have to buy a minimum of 100 of the regular copies just to get the privilege of selling that one book. So the higher the prices go, the less amount that a store can be able to purchase, because they just can't afford it. Now, when Marvel, for example, because they're key to doing this, and I'm a huge Marvel fan, but I got to call out even the people I like if you want to stay consistent. Marvel is doing a test run, because it used to be $2.99 a couple years ago. Then all of a sudden, it was $3.99. And now you're starting to see the transition into $4.99. So you're only seeing it right now for the first issue. But if people continually buy it from the local comic store, which in the short term, like I said, will give business to the shop, what that's going to tell the corporation of Marvel and the distribution companies that, look, people are willing to pay $4.99 for this book. So what will happen? Now all of a sudden, all of their books will eventually become $4.99. And what do you think is going to happen to people that have pull lists of 10 or more comics? Do you think they would be able to afford the additional costs? Hey, Captain Cummings, long time no see, man. I heard rumors that you disappeared. Welcome, I'm glad to see you. But what I was saying, to continue, what'll happen is when the prices get higher and higher, just think of a kid that has, what, $25 to spend? That's one less book if you buy 5 books. So that means people will start pulling comics off of their pull list. And then books that they would have been kind of iffy about, they might decide to leave on the shelf, which ends up ultimately hurting the business and guaranteeing its closure. So, if you want local comic book stores to survive, remember they're a business. They don't make lots of profit on new books. Most of their profits that keep them in business come from the books they sell off the shelves and on the walls and in the boxes. It's not the new books, because they're not making a lot of profit. And every time the price is raised, people have to kind of pull back from what they can afford. I mean, how many people do you know at $4.99 are going to have 20 books in their pull list? It's just not feasible, especially when you're talking college students who have maybe student loans they have to pay off. They have books and supplies they have to pay for. It may not sound like a big deal. Well, it's only $1, but you're talking $1 every issue. And if you have a pull list of 10 comics, that's an extra $10 every week, every 2 weeks, or every month, which builds up after a while. And that's $10 less that you have to put gas in your car. $10 less to maybe buy school supplies. So, if you think short term, buying that one book from that store gives them $2, maybe $2.50 of that $4.99 book. Maybe even less than that. But it sends the message to Marvel, the company, because remember, see, this is where people have to get the emotional part out and think business-wise. Marvel sells a product. And you're never going to sell a product if you tell the truth about it. You have to lie. You have to overblow it. That's why they will tell you how great movies are, how great every TV show is, how great every comic book artist, writer, inker, whatever is going to be that helps them sell their product. The bottom line to any major corporation is they are subservient to their shareholders. And shareholders don't give a rat's behind about who's playing Spider-Man, what gender Spider-Gwen is, how much you love Daredevil, and whether you think Marvel or DC is better. All they care about is, I've invested money into my stocks for this company. Will I get a profit? And if they do not get a profit, that product ceases to exist. That is why when you see things like, for example, the Batman v Superman movie, like it or hate it is up to you. But from a financial standpoint, it was a failure. Not an absolute failure, because it's not like they lost $1 billion, but they did not get anywhere near what they were projecting they would financially. So what happens? Remember how much they told you before the movie came out, how much they loved it? But yet, you're not going to see, at least for a long time, Batman v Superman 2. So they convince us. See, this is the thing about something that you love. You will always put your heart and emotion into it. And then, unfortunately, most people will assume that the very people that are making this product to sell to you is going to have the same passion as you do. And they might have started out that way. You ever notice when a business is small, when it's a mom and pop business, they tend to care about the customers. They'll go out of their way. You may actually speak to the owner themselves. And then as it becomes bigger and bigger and other companies come and buy them out and it starts spreading all over the place, all of a sudden now when you call customer service, you get a machine, you get a robot. You don't have the same customer service, but they'll still tell you, oh, it's still got those family values. So the issue is sending a message to the business for long-term benefit, not short-term gain, because that's how they want you to think. They want you to think that it's okay to spend that $4.99 even though you think it's too high of a price because you're helping the local comic shop. But in the long run, you're condemning them to failure because you're sending a message to the corporation that you may not like it, you may absolutely hate it, you may make videos saying how much you hate it, but if you gave them your money, that is all they care about. That is the bottom line. They have shareholders who invest in the companies. That's what gets movies made. Not because Stan Lee is a diehard comic book fan. Stan Lee has had nothing to do with Marvel since the 70s, but yet they use him like Colonel Sanders from Kentucky Fried Chicken because he's a nice, friendly, warm, elderly gentleman who says nice things. But you think he has anything to do with the profits or losses in a movie? It's made to get people emotionally distracted by the pretty little things over here. While over here, they are pulling your money from your wallet. And you should expect quality from what you are willing to give your hard-earned money for. Just like another example I used is the Colin Kaepernick deal that Nike made with that individual. Now, I'm not going to get into the whole political point of view. I don't agree with what Nike did, but they have the right to do it. People have the right to do smart things, and they have the right to do dumb things. But there are consequences for either. But I saw many people who disagreed with what Nike did and chose to show their hatred by taking something they've already purchased, which is maybe an article of clothing, maybe it was a hat, maybe it was shoes, and setting them on fire. Now, that's nice. It might make you feel good. It might get you some extra views on YouTube, but Nike already has the money from those purchases. So do you think they really care about what you do with something they already have your money on? Of course not. It makes you feel good, but it's not sending a message. Now, those that say, well, I'm burning these as protest, and then saying I will never buy a product from Nike again, and they actually honor what they say, that sends the message. The only way you stop this roller coaster ride from heading to its ultimate demise is by thinking long term. Because Marvel, DC, Image, any of these companies, they do not care about local comic book shops. If they did, they wouldn't have all of these thousands of variants where the comic book stores, especially the small ones, would basically go out of business to try and compete with the larger comic shops who could buy them no problem. How many local comic shops that you know of can buy a 1 in 1,000 variant and can be able to survive buying 1,000 of a regular copy, including all of the other books they have to buy? So if Marvel, DC, Image, and all of them really cared about local comic book shops, they wouldn't do things like that. Marvel makes their profit. Because here's the thing. Let's say your local comic book store finally says, you know what? I'm going to buy one of those 1 in 500 super duper deluxe rare variants to sell to one of my subscribers, one of my people. Marvel gets all of that money up front. So not only do you have to pay for the 500 regular books to get that one book, but you also do have to pay for that variant. And Captain Cummins says, I bought Under Armour products. There you go. You give the money to the competition, it sends a message. Saying you don't like Nike, for example, and you have the right to like them or not like them, I'm not here to tell you how to think. But if you are against what they did in that particular advertisement, which I'm thoroughly against, just burning their products is not enough. You have to make a stand, and sometimes your stand is sacrifice. But getting back to what I was saying, if that local comic book store buys 500 of the regular copies and then has to pay for that 1 in 500 variant, Marvel has all of the money for all of those books. Now, let's say they sell that 1 in 500 variant. Let's say they sell it for $500. But they spent $3,000 for those 500 books. And of those 500 books, they sell 125. Guess what? They're now stuck with all those books that will never sell and eventually will end up in a dollar bin. Do you think that actually helps the local comic book store, or do you think it hinders the bookstore? Because they have to buy thousands of books every month. Books you've never heard of, books you may not ever want, books they're taking a chance on. And when you send a message by buying an expensive book, now $4.99 is not out in my reach. Like I said, I will go to eBay and buy it for $10 if I have to. Because that $10, none of it goes to Marvel. All $10 goes to somebody who's trying to earn a living. So I'm actually helping a private business that way. But if you spend that $4.99 on that price tag, especially if you don't like it because of the principle of it, it's not the money. If you see the books that I buy books that are up to $2,000 a piece. Captain Cummings says, Diamond never gets any comic shop orders. Correct. I guess he's responding to somebody else's question. But my point is, when you send a message to Marvel, DC, any of these companies, because if all of a sudden Marvel's becomes $4.99, DC as a competitor is going to say, wait a minute, we're charging $3.99. Marvel's selling their books for $4.99. Our comics are actually better, and a lot of times their DC newer books are actually better reads than Marvel. What if they say now all of a sudden, you know what, let's try the $4.99 #1 issues. And now all of a sudden DC books are $4.99. And let's say Image says, you know what, we don't want to go that far, but instead of $3.99, let's go to $4.25. That is what's going to drive the comic book stores out of business. And that's exactly what happened in the 90s. I am 47 years old. In about another 2 months or so, in November, I will turn 48. I was in my early 20s when the comic book crash happened. And all of my local stores all around me went out of business. There used to be, every 5 minutes of driving, you could hit another comic book store. Today, I have 2 comic book stores that I had around me. One within a half-hour drive, one within about a 10-minute drive. The one within a 10-minute drive went out of business. The other one, probably staying in existence because of the fact that they are probably the only local store within about a 25-mile radius. But if these companies keep raising the prices, it's going to push people out of the market. Or at the very least, reduce the amount of books. So it counterbalances that way. If you have 10 books at $4.99, and then it raises to $5.99, and now you can only afford 6 books, it still evens out. So yes, the person that made the comment saying that giving that $4.99 to the local comic book store will help them. It will help them in the short term, but in the long term will be what will cause them to ultimately go out of business. And if you ever want to be a successful businessman or woman, you cannot think the small little profit at the short term. You have to think the long game if you want to survive. And that is why I am no, billionaire. But I have been able to maintain 2 businesses one since 2001 and the other since 2002 with no advertisement past the first 2 years. Everything has been word of mouth. I have been able to succeed. I don't have any welfare programs. I'm not on any government subsidy. I don't believe in handouts. I don't need them. I will always work extra if I have to. But I've been able to survive basically with an average work week since 2001. My average work week has averaged out to 14 hours a week or less. Because I have to think about long term. I also don't want to dig myself an early grave by overworking just so I can make some extra money that I'm probably going to spend anyway. So you have to think long term. You know what Marvel and DC and all these other companies would love? For local businesses to go out of business, so now they don't have the middleman. Now they can open up their own Marvel web store and their own DC web store and their own Image web store where you can buy their books directly from them. And they might say, oh, well, you didn't like the $4.99, now we'll only charge you $3.99. So you're right back to where you started, but now there are no local comic book stores anymore because they were driven out of business by the larger business. I guarantee you, you have a Home Depot somewhere near you. But I also guarantee you, you do not have any mom and pop hardware stores anymore. Bigger stores always drive out the competition. You ever wonder why Walmart is all over the place? Because they took the little mom and pop stores and bought things to get to the point where they drove them out of business. So if you think these comic book creators, writers, inkers, all of these people that work for Marvel, DC, Image, any of these companies, if you really think they can only survive if local comic book stores are in business, you're not understanding business clearly enough. They would love the middleman to go under. Look at what Marvel is doing with Netflix. Isn't Marvel taking the majority of their movies and bringing it to what? Their own network. Skipping out the middleman. And Netflix is by far no small company. They can survive that blow. But a local comic book store will not be able to survive. So that is why, even though I wanted to get The Life of Captain Marvel #1, I am not willing to spend $4.99 to send the message to Marvel that it is okay for you to raise the prices because I'll buy it anyway. And it's not about the money, because if I buy it from somebody from eBay, I know I'm going to pay more. But that's okay. None of that money goes to Marvel. None of that says to the stockholders that there is plenty of reason why we could keep the price high. So, like, for example, let's just take The Life of Captain Marvel #1, use that as the example. If I was to buy that book from somebody from eBay, how many does that register sold under Marvel's accountants? One book. So even though that book was sold for a higher price, Marvel only collected the $4.99 or whatever percentage they get, and that's it. They get nothing from the eBay part. If I decided to take that other person's advice, or anybody that thinks that the short-term benefit of buying a book from the store helps the local comic shop, that means the person that was going to sell it on eBay didn't get the sale, so they bought one from Marvel. And instead of me buying from eBay, I bought it from the local comic book store. Now there's two books that are in existence instead of one. So Marvel gets the profit for both. So by me skipping the store, even though it may hurt them short term, but it will keep them in existence, that sends a message to Marvel that they're not going to sell as many books as they originally thought. And because they care about the bottom line, because their job is to please the shareholders, despite what they tell you in interviews, they will say, all right, we're losing business. We're not making as many sales, so we may not be able to raise the price the way we wanted to. Because trust me, any given time a business can raise a price, you're darn well sure they're going to do it in a heartbeat. That is why I tell people all the time, you really do not want brand loyalty. Because brand loyalty suckers you in to pay prices for something that you love and can't do without, even if they give you a mediocre profit or product. Make them earn your pay. Make them earn that hard work that you have to do to make that money. Don't just throw it away. I mean, if you're a multi-millionaire and you have millions of dollars you could throw away, then please, by far, do what you want. But if you really care about the local stores and small businesses, you got to think long term. Because if enough of us said to Marvel, by sending the message, we're not going to buy that $4.99 book, that might hurt the local comic book store in the short term. But in the long term, it prevents Marvel or DC or any company from raising that price and then ultimately just guaranteeing the store to close. But with any kind of message, there is a backlash that is temporary. Think of it like somebody who's addicted to heroin. Now, if you're ever been addicted to heroin or know somebody that's been addicted to heroin, if you continue to use it, you need more and more of it. And what happens is eventually you create such a tolerance that one day you take so much of it just to create that little buzz that eventually it kills you. So you know if you do heroin for long enough time and do more and more of it, eventually it's going to kill you. So if you decide, well, I don't want to die from a heroin overdose, and you decide today's the day I'm going to quit, do you think all of a sudden the day you quit everything's sunshine and roses? No. You're going to go through a withdrawal. You're going to go through hell. You're going to vomit. You're going to sweat. You're going to feel like your insides are crawling outside of your body. You're going to crave it more than ever just to stop the pain. And it may last for days. And it could seem like, especially the first couple of days, would be torture. And sadly, I know about this because one of my best friends growing up, not through heroin, but did it with cocaine. He was ready to murder his own family to get another hit. And they had to lock him in his room for 24 hours straight, banging on the walls, begging and pleading, crying. But what happens when you get through the withdrawal and you make it past that short-term pain? You come out free of the clinging of that drug. And it's the same thing with businesses. Sometimes you have to, for principle's sake, you have to take a little bit of a loss for a long-term gain. And if you cannot see that, that is why businesses are going under left and right. That is why for a long time many businesses were going overseas. People always think about the short-term pleasure, because let me tell you, anybody that has ever been addicted to any drug will tell you that they do it for the short-term pleasure. How many people smoke cigarettes knowing it eventually will kill them? But why do most people do it? Because it helps them, quote-unquote, relax. I've been working in bars since the 90s. I've heard everything. It's the long term that you're looking for. But you're going to have to go through pains. And even as a business, yes, if you don't, I didn't give my local store that $4.99. I gave them other business. But if I would have given that $4.99, Marvel says, you know what, in another year, now every book's $4.99. And then the number ones are now $5.99. At what point do people walk away? And when people finally have had enough and walk away, do you think Marvel goes out of business, or do you think the local comic shops go out of business? And if the local comic book shops go out of business, do you think that affects Marvel? It may on the little term, but notice that when the comic book collapse happened in the 90s, Marvel and DC still stand to this day. Now, Marvel almost went bankrupt, but that was because of some of their really bad business decisions back then. It had nothing to do with the fact that comic book local stores were closing. That was just poor practices. But they still exist. So, I want people to think long term. And that's why I tell people with any kind of investment, even when it comes to comics, how many comic books that you bought in the 90s were worth nothing for decades? Look at your Amazing Spider-Man 300s. Look at your New Mutants 98s and 87s. Look at your Captain Marvel #1. Look how good that book is doing now. 10 years ago, you could have bought a whole box of them for 20 bucks. And you wouldn't have been able to give them away. I tried to sell my signed Amazing Spider-Man 300 that was signed by Todd McFarlane about 8 to 10 years ago at a yard sale for $25. No one bought it. Boy, am I glad that didn't happen. So you have to think long term if you want and really care about the survival of local comic shops. You may have to spend more on eBay, or you may have to pass on a book. That may make you feel like that drug you really need, but know is going to kill you. And Last Avenger says a very important question. Chris, can you see another comic book crash on the horizon? There is already a comic book crash that's going to happen. It's inevitable. When it comes to anything that has to do with investing, it creates a bubble. And eventually all bubbles will pop. I actually have a video on this that I talked about when I feel the crash is coming. Because the crash is coming. but it's not tomorrow. It's not next week. It's not next year. The only thing that's keeping this bubble afloat is the Marvel movies are doing incredibly well. And that's bringing new people in, and that's keeping old people from leaving. And that is why I tried so hard to beg and plead with some of the people in the comic book community to stop the childish fighting, stop the childish ganging up on people, and actually work together. Because if we actually work together, which doesn't mean we have to be best friends and all sleep together, it just means we have to let bygones be bygones, we would actually keep people from leaving. Because every person that leaves the comic book community is one less person buying a comic book, going to see another movie. So to me, and I've said it in the other video, but I'll say it here, when is the comic book crash coming? When Marvel does 3 bad movies in a row. Because eventually Marvel, with its track record, eventually they'll probably make a movie that is not successful. Now I'm talking financially. Things like Thor, you know, The Dark World, that was a bad Marvel movie, but it made a lot of money. So to them, that's a success. That's why they continued the franchise. I mean, look at Iron Man. Iron Man 1 was great. Iron Man 2, eh. Iron Man 3 was basically Tony Stark running around like he was scared of every single thing and had the little kid that reminded me of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. It was a joke. It should never have been made. But yet, look how popular Iron Man is. Not because the movie was good as far as viewing it, but it was a financial success. That's what kept it alive. I mean, how many people, I'll bring back Batman v Superman. How many people love that movie? There are people, plenty of people that say they love that movie. But it was a financial disaster. They didn't make the profits that they wanted. That's why you're not seeing it. But they'll tell you how much they love making it, how much fun it was, how much they got along with the cast. They tell you what you want to hear. And sadly, most people buy it because it contributes to the ego of, wow, they're actually making something that I love seem really great. That makes me feel great. It's like the drug. It's there to make you feel great for the short term, even though slowly it's killing you. But you never think long term. And I'm trying to get people to think in a different way because I've already seen this road. And you're going to get some of the people, some of the older collectors who say they love comic books, but yet will never buy a coverless comic. And why do they need the books graded if they only love them for reading them? They'll say, well, I want a comic book crash because then I can get all my comics for such a cheap price, which is such a selfish thing to say. Because, yeah, you'll get comics cheaper, but a lot of comic book stores will be out of business. A lot of the lower-selling comic books will cease to exist. How many people will lose their jobs? How many people are going to go to the movies if the comic book crash happens? You think all your favorite movies are going to be made every year like they are now? You think all these TV shows are going to be able to survive? So some of these people are willing to sacrifice everybody else's happiness and the long-term goals for their own selfish needs of saving about $100 on a key issue book that they could have bought years ago but decided not to, and blame other people for their choice to not pick up a book until everybody wanted it. So I say things that may offend some people, or may get mad at me because I'm the one that says it. But this is the reality of what is. Whether you like me or hate me, it doesn't change that what I'm saying is right if you know anything about business. This should not be an emotional roller coaster where egos have to be involved to actually agree or disagree with something that could hurt or benefit us all. There are certain comic book channels that I don't like those people. But notice I don't mention their names. I don't bash them. I don't go to their channels and try and hurt them. Why? Because then that creates fighting. And that creates people to walk away. Or to never enter the comic book realm. You know how many people I've said you should make comic book videos? And they say, well, look at all the hate you're getting. I'm afraid to do it. I don't want to be attacked or criticized. You think that helps the comic book community, or you think it hurts the comic book community? Now, again, I am not saying that we all have to hug and sing Kumbaya and agree with everything that everybody says. We're allowed to disagree, but can you disagree without name-calling and ganging up on somebody? Because all that does is it sends a bad message, and that will help speed up a comic book crash. So if you want to know when a comic book crash is happening, well, when you see a lot of this internal fighting continue and more people give up and walk away because not only are the prices getting too expensive, but the people in the comic book community have to form little righteous gangs and they say, the hell with this, I want no part of this anymore, and they no longer buy comics and they no longer go to the movies because, trust me, when I left the comic book community, well, there wasn't a comic book community back then, but when the crash happened in the 90s and I stopped buying comics, I did not know anything about comics between the years 1996 to 2014. I wanted nothing to do with comics. And many people of my age and generation who went through that comic book crash, and you could see it in comments all the time from people that are just starting to come back, they say the same thing. I haven't picked up a comic book in 20 years. I didn't even know Captain America was shot and killed. I didn't know about the Spider-Man armor, or that he died when he got his brain changed with Dr. Octopus. I didn't know about Civil War. I didn't care. So when people walk away, they walk away for good. They wipe their hands clean on it. Is that productive or counterproductive? And you'll see, like you'll see in every one of my videos, I will get the hate, and that's fine. But that keeps newer people from ever wanting to see the joy of comic book collecting. And they're going to, for fear of being bullied or ganged up on, agree with people just because it's the popular choice that may not be the right choice. That is what's going to hurt your local comic book stores. That is what's going to create the comic book crash. So yes, a few people will be able to get Hulk 181s for probably $500 when that crash happens. But they won't have anybody to share it with. You think all of the people in the comic book community are still going to be here if there's another comic book crash? I guarantee you 80% of the people that make videos or even talk on videos will be gone. Will care less and move on to something else. You think they're going to spend money on the movies that you love? So say goodbye to your movies and TV shows. You like a specific comic that isn't one of the #1 printed comics at the time? Say goodbye to those. So all the comics you say you love to read, they won't be able to afford them anymore because no one's buying them. But if you want to think like a drug and think about the short-term benefits, you will have them. But it will ultimately be the death of you with a drug or with the business with the comic books. And that's why I get so upset when people say, oh, you know, investors are ruining the industry. You want to know something? I have plenty of videos that don't talk about investments. Those are the least watched videos of all of my videos. You could look yourself. You know what the #1 viewed videos I have are constantly? Are the ones that, oh, get this book now. Or what's the next key issue? Those have 3 times more views, which tells me the average person that watches comic book videos cares more about the value of the comic than the story within. So the smaller amount of people that don't view it business-wise can live in their la-la land bubble and think, well, I'm happy in this way and this is how it's supposed to be, and you ignore the numbers and the reality. That is what's going to cause the crash. That is what's going to speed up the crash. I don't want to be right on this, but I see the writing on the wall. So what will happen is it's going to be based on Marvel, because right now, as of now, DC cannot get their self straight. They're about to potentially lose Henry Cavill from playing Superman, and I've heard they might be having Michael B. Jordan play Superman. The wonderful person that played The Flash. Now, is he a bad human being? I don't know. I've never met him. I don't have a problem with him. But the day they make Black Panther played by a white actor is the day I will see Superman as a black actor. So you can't say I'm racist, because it goes both ways. The day Wonder Woman is played by a man is the day I'll see a male character played by a woman. So you can't call me sexist because it'll be both ways. But Hollywood doesn't get it. And if people argue about it, but yet still give them the money, because let's say you're a diehard Superman fan, and you're a diehard DC fan, and you want to show your loyalty by going to see that movie, you're sending them the message that you're okay with it. Now again, it has nothing to do with race, gender, whatever. Superman was a white character, just like Black Panther is a black character. I don't want to see Blade played by a white woman. Does that mean I hate white women? No. It just means that Blade was played by an African-American character. So why do you change it? So just imagine if all of a sudden Black Panther was played by a Chinese man. You don't think anyone that grew up with that character as their hero is going to be affected by that and not be happy? Does that make them racist because they like the character the way they were? But yet, if I myself, for example, as a heterosexual white male, say that I don't want an African-American character to play Superman, they will automatically label me as racist. But here I am saying I would never watch Blade if he was portrayed by a white character, because he was an African-American character. Keep them consistent with who they are. But it shows that even corporations, they just want your money. They're running out of really good ideas, so they just say, oh, you like this character? Well, we're going to do something so different. It's going to get you angry, it's going to get you mad, but it's going to create free advertisement. People are going to be able to go see it, even just to trash it. If you go to a movie just to trash it, you think they care? They got your money. And a lot of times it's psychological warfare. They want you to get mad. So you go to their live stream or you go to their video just to thumb it down or make a nasty comment. But meanwhile, to do that, you had to first go through an advertisement. So you gave them money. They play people. I tell people all the time, stay away from the emotional part because they sucker people in that way. They make tons of money. You want to make a lot of money in this world? Join the extreme left, and I'm talking extreme left movement, where you just bash everybody, even people that have facts that counteract what your argument is. And you could just put up a PayPal account or a GoFundMe account. You'll make millions of dollars from people willing to give you their money. You don't think people take advantage of that and take advantage of those people? So I want people to think in a different way. I want you to think like a business. Think long term. When you buy a more expensive book, you are sending a message not to the local comic book store, who now has to spend more money on all of their books, which means less profit. Because if you think when Marvel raises the price from $3.99 to $4.99, if you think Marvel is giving that extra dollar to the local comic book store, you are out of your mind. 80% of it probably goes to Marvel. So you really think that's going to help keep the local comic book store in business? That they're going to make a minuscule amount more of profit, but less sales because of those price increases? You think that's really helping them? That's guaranteeing them going out of business. So I want to thank the person that left that comment. And again, I am not bashing that person, because I thought that was important enough to be inspired to make this video, because many people view that way. And that's what businesses want. Businesses don't want you to focus on the long-term effects. They want you to focus on now. That's why they will want you to smoke cigarettes, even though you know they will kill you. But they won't kill you the first time you take a puff, the 30th time you take a puff, the 10,000th time you take a puff. But eventually it will. Drugs and alcohol will eventually kill you, or at least increase your chances of an early death. But because they make you feel good at the short-term instant gratification moment, you won't think about it because I'll worry about it later. But when later comes, there's nothing you can do. And do you think the tobacco company or the Budweiser companies of the world, or even the comic book companies, are going to be there for you? When all the local comic book stores go out of business, except for the really expensive corporate-owned ones, and I'm not going to mention their names and give them free advertisement, when they're still around and you have to drive 50 miles to get to your nearest local comic shop, you tell me the day that Stan Lee comes to your house and tells you how sorry he is that that happened. That day will never come. But yet he'll make plenty of videos telling you how wonderful he is and how many people are willing to stand in line for 4 to 6 hours to spend $100 to $200 to get his signature, even though they tell you you're not allowed to look at him, you're not allowed to talk to him. Is he Jesus? I love Stan Lee, but if you think I'm going to spend an entire day waiting online, first of all, to spend money to get into a Comic-Con, wait 4 to 6 hours online to get him to sign something that he won't even look you in the eyes for, slides it across the table, you're not allowed to say anything to him, and I have to pay for that privilege? Pass. I'll buy the same book on eBay for probably less than I would have spending the whole day, and most people say, well, they do it for the pleasure. If that's your form of pleasure, to meet somebody that's a multi-millionaire that doesn't give a rat's behind about you and is making tons of money off of you and won't even allow you the privilege of saying thank you, if that's your idea of a good time, hey, to each their own. I find that rather insulting. So anyway, I don't know what the response will be with this. I know from 6 or 7 people what the response will be, no matter what I say. I could say I cured cancer, and they would hate it because I said it. If those people cannot change their mindset, they are going to create this very dark cloud on the comic book community. That's why every time pretty much I say comic book community, I do it with air quotes, because it's not really a community. You can't gang up on people and think that's going to last forever. You can't tell other people how to live their lives and say it's right or wrong, and not expect people to walk away or actually counter-argue. I try and ignore it all I can. But many people feel the effects, and they walk away, and that hurts the business. So you want to know when a crash comes? The crash will come, not when there's one Marvel movie that's bad, because eventually it's going to happen. The second one, people are going to start thinking, well, that's 2 in a row. When the third bad movie in a row, and again, I'm not talking about whether you like the movie or not. I'm talking about the financial profit. If 3 Marvel movies in a row do not make a profit enough to warrant another movie, that is when the crash is about to happen. Because people in this comic book community, instead of all working together to see a larger long-term goal of keeping people interested and happy in this community, we have sections of group people that gang up on others and bully others and give out wrong information because it makes them emotionally feel good about themselves, is actually pushing people away and contributing to a speedier crash. That's not the smartest way to go. So I extended a leaf to certain people. Not one replied. That's their choice. I'm going to continue to try and be as positive as I can, but also as realistic. Because you may not like me emotionally, but the things and information I've provided you in this video, I challenge anyone that's been in business to tell me and point out how wrong I was about what I spoke about. Now, you can nitpick about maybe my opinion of Stan Lee or something. I'm not talking about that. If you feel spending $300 for the whole day, which includes parking, gas, food, tickets to the con, how much you have to pay Stan Lee, if you think that's a great privilege, that's fine. I'm not going to bash you for it. It's not my cup of tea, and I would never do it, especially when I remember back in the days in the 90s when I could actually hold a conversation. I remember sitting down with John Romita Sr., discussing his Daredevil number 12, which was the first book he ever did for Marvel. And he actually didn't remember it, and I reminded him. We actually sat down one-on-one and had a conversation on how happy he was to sign my book. He didn't say, oh, you can't speak to me, or better yet, he didn't have representatives say I couldn't speak to him. He signed my book. It was the inside of the book. And if it wasn't for the fact that that book got stolen in the box that all my other keys got stolen in, I would still have that to this day. Because Daredevil 12 was the first appearance of... No, it was the one with Kazar sitting on a tree. I was going to say the first appearance of Stiltman, but that's Daredevil number 8. Back in those days, you can have conversations. You can actually be friendly. Talk for minutes. For free. Now you have to pay for the privilege and you're not even allowed to speak to them? Like, what is this, the Pope? I'm sorry. I'm not going to bash you if you like it, and you could justify it, and that's fine. But if you want to bash me from my own point of view, that's kind of hypocritical. If you can only give and not take, that's not good. So anyway, I saw a bunch of people here today, and I always do a surprise subscriber shout-out. I do want to say, Captain Cummings, if you're still listening, I don't know if you are, because I haven't seen a comment for a while, and I actually don't read the comments, because if there's fighting, I don't want to be a part of that. But I'm actually glad that you came here. It's nice to see you. I mean, he used to come on my live shows all the time. Hopefully one day he could message me and we can create a dialogue and maybe do something like that again. But I want people in this community to start policing themselves. Don't accept bullying. Don't accept the negativity. Don't accept others telling others how to collect. Because it's going to hurt us all. Remember, a few bad apples spoil the entire tree. Not the other way around. Let's stop that. If you don't want the comic book crash, or you want to at least slow it down for another couple of years so you can enjoy these movies until 2030, then we need to be a little bit more adult. Christopher Wykowski says, you're not allowed to say thank you to Stan Lee. Is that right? Well, I haven't gone, so I don't know. I can only base it on what I hear. And many people have said that they're told online that you're not allowed to speak with him. That to me is ridiculous. Other people have said if you want to take a photo with him, $100. Really? I'm going to pay you $100 to stand next to a 95-year-old man that hasn't been relevant to Marvel since the 70s? That's like saying Colonel Sanders still cooks the chicken. Come on. They're showpieces. He makes millions of dollars putting up a front so you could say, oh, look at that old sweet man. Well, he's raking in millions of dollars. How many tens of thousands of dollars is he making, first of all, to appear in that show, and then the profits from all of that money you're giving him? For the privilege of not even being able to speak to him. And if I'm wrong, please correct me. I don't mind somebody disagreeing, but just, can you do it without name-calling, without insults, without making a video that's bashing me or making up a story about me that isn't true, that is improvable, and no one has yet to prove any of their accusations they've had? All that does is it hurts the comic book community. I'm not going to be a part of that. But I am not afraid to talk about what most people are afraid to talk about, or may not be familiar with. So, if you want to hate me, that's fine. But don't hate the message. You want to hate the messenger? Nothing I can do about that. But listen to the message. Because I'm trying to help the community stay relevant for a hell of a lot longer than the direction it's headed. It doesn't mean I'll achieve the goal. Doesn't make me Jesus Christ or a savior. It just means that I care about more than just myself. Because I don't want a comic book crash so I can save money on comic books. I don't mind giving somebody on eBay my money if it helps them be able to maintain a lifestyle. I'd rather give it to some stranger I don't know than a corporation I don't know. Name 10 people that work for Marvel. Not including Stan Lee, because he technically doesn't work for Marvel. He's a representative. Name 10 shareholders that own DC's stocks. So you want to talk about you're better off buying from somebody you know than somebody you don't. How many people do you know and meet and talk to on a regular basis from any comic book company? Pages, Films, and Plastic says, God forgive me if I'm wrong, but why does Stan Lee want more money at his age? Well, because he can give it away to his family if he has to. Or maybe he just likes money. I don't know. Why do rich people stay rich? Because they tend to be very cheap with their money. Why do you think corporations have stocks? You know what stocks are? Getting stupid people to invest money in their business so they don't have to. That's what stocks are. You're putting money into a business so they don't have to. That's what stocks are. You really think because you own 5 or 6% of a company that you have any say in what they do? They give you the illusion that they think you do. Unless you own 51% of a stock interest, they could give a rat's behind what you have to say, think, or breathe about their company. You are irrelevant to them other than another person giving them money so they don't have to. It's the biggest sucker's game I've ever seen, where a business says, oh, why should I use my own money when I can get other people to use their money to make my business grow? So when you lose all of your money, when the stocks go down, the CEOs, they all tend to not be broke at the end. They all tend to walk away with lots of millions of dollars of your money. You think they're calling you, telling you how bad they feel that you lost all that stock? But they'll tell you how grateful they are and how much you're helping keeping the business thriving. They're using your emotions and your greed against you so they don't have to spend a dime. But most people won't talk about that, because if you can make a couple of $1,000s in stocks, well, you want to keep that little business going, even though it hurts people in the long run. Again, short-term gain and individual selfish gain for the hurting of the whole entire country in its long term. But people don't want to see that, because you don't want to fiddle with somebody's profit margin, even if it's wrong. And that's why this country and this planet is going in the direction it's going. Too many individuals worried about their own self-interest instead of trying to focus on all of us as a whole. Lots of division instead of everybody remembering that we're all human beings. Just happen to be different color skin, different religious preferences, different sexual desires. Everyone is okay as long as you don't infringe on the rights of somebody else. But yet, lots of people that tend to make a lot of money. You ever notice the people that are the most divisive are the ones trying to sell you something? Whether it's a material thing or an idea? You ever notice the people that spread all of this hatred and division are the ones that profit off of it? Think about that. So anyway, this is probably by far one of my least positive videos, but is, I think, something people need to hear. The problem this day and age is people have become so delicate that they cannot handle what they need. They only can handle what they want. And the world does not work on your wants and needs and desires. Well, the needs, yes, because you need food to survive. You don't need your PlayStation or Xbox to survive. But people have taken things like Xbox and PlayStation and Nintendo and Marvel and DC and all these other irrelevant things in the long run and turning them into their reason to exist. Because make no mistakes, I love comic books. It's why I named my channel We Love Comics. I've loved them since I was a child, since the first book I ever got was a Amazing Spider-Man book with a record. It was a 45 with Draco the Dragon. I still remember the voice to this day, and that was in 1974 when I was 3 years old. I still remember when he goes, Draco! But if I had to walk away from it tomorrow, I'd do it in a heartbeat without a tear in my eyes. If there was some, God forbid, nuclear fallout, and I was a surviving member of the people that survived, you think I'm going to really care about my comics at that point? Or you think I'm going to worry about where I'm going to get my shelter, where I'm going to get my food and water? Priorities always go into effect when there's a crisis. But right now, so many people are so delicate that if I say I don't want a black man playing Superman, they automatically label me a racist. Or if I say I don't want, let's say, Batman being played by a woman, I'll be accused of being a sexist. But I'll also say I don't want Wonder Woman to be played by a man, and I don't want Blade to be played by a white person. So you can't call me sexist or racist. because I choose both sides. Right is right and wrong is wrong. I don't care about the feelings. And the problem is most people these days care too much about feelings and short-term gains. It is just no different than any drug. Short-term gain, short-term pleasure, long-term demise. But no one thinks about the long-term demise. Because I guarantee you that there are several people that are watching this video, whether it's live or days, weeks, or months later, that smoke cigarettes, eat fast food, drink coffee, and drink alcohol. They all make you feel good. Eating that candy bar. You know, Snickers used to have a commercial that said Snickers really satisfies. What they're saying is if you're hungry, eat a Snickers bar. Well, if you have an empty gas tank and you fill it with water, did you not fill the gas tank? Of course you did. Did you fill it with anything that's going to be beneficial to your car? Nope. But it will fill it. The Snickers will taste good. Give you that great little bit of energy. Even though its sugar has been proven to cause cancer. You know what cigarettes will do. You know what alcohol can do, especially if you drive after you've drank it. And I sure hope people don't do that. But people don't want to think long term. And then when long-term finally catches up with you, everybody's all shocked and surprised. Where did this come from? So let me pick today's surprise subscriber shout-out, because I'd be very curious to see if somebody watches this when it's not live and actually watched this far. So, Darren Wonders, if you are still here, you are today's surprise subscriber shout-out. I hope you found this video informative. It may not have been entertaining. Many people are not going to watch this entire video, and that's a shame. Ignoring a problem doesn't make it go away, and even if it does, is that good? Because I'll leave you with this, on that note. If you don't brush your teeth and ignore them, they will go away. Is that a good thing? Thanks for listening. Please give this a thumbs up. Show my haters that the lovers are overwhelmingly more positive and supportive of my channel than their negative, well, just to say negativity, will ever be. Show the support. Share these videos. Pass this information. Make your own video. Share your own point of view, even if it's the different of mine. But let's see if you can do it without name-calling, without attack. Let's see you just come up with the facts. And to each and every one of you that spent a minute or the entire video listening to what I had to say, and to those of you especially that took the time to leave a live chat comment or comment on this later on, I thank you, I appreciate you, and I hope we get to do this for many years to come, where we all have the love of comics. So thank you for listening, everybody. Love you all. Hopefully you learned something from this. And there will be no cat, because, like I always say, a couple people say they like the cats, but I don't want to be one of those person that stages it. If the cats come in naturally, that makes it special. If I start just bringing them onto the thing, then it becomes something that, oh yeah, I wanted to do this because people like the cats. I want it to be integrative, with integrity for everything that I do, including the cats. But they thank you for appreciating and thinking about them. So that's it. And don't forget, it's not you, it's not I, it's We Love Comics, unless they're $4.99 in price. Have a good day.